National Museum of African American History, they're having a special showing on that wall. That's a big.
Oh yeah, so that's a big attraction as well.
And that's making it even more complicated.
People are just staring into
Yeah.
So that's how we roll, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's good to meet you. My name's Maya. How
Okay,
are you?
so I am going to do the introduction now.
Okay.
So thank you so much. I had the wonderful occasion of interviewing Dr.Maya Dilworth. I like to say her whole name, except for Cassandra. Dr.Maya Cassandra Dilworth, correct?
Well done.
Thank you so much. I practiced. Can you hold this for a second?
Sure, yeah.
And I had the wonderful occasion of interviewing Dr. Ng this summer for, I forget their name now, but it was an ovarian cancer organization. And their mission is to disseminate information so that women are empowered about how they can take care of themselves, because traditionally we are nurturers and we take care of everybody but ourselves. And so Dr. Ng was actually sort of the keynote speaker, and also her wonderful children's book. She signed the books. We had a great time. It was at Busboys and Poets in DC. But Dr. Ng is not only an author, she's also a lecturer at the University of Hawaii with the main studies around peace studies. And what was interesting to me is when she sent me the links, I really got invested in the seeds of peace. And I'm hopefully you will go into that a little bit more, because I would like this session to be about sort of sharing those critical thinking, all of those seeds, because we're at a point in human history where it seems that our society is becoming increasingly more violent. So it is really important that we implement, you and your co-founder, with the seeds of peace. And it's not just about, tree hugging. And like you said in your TED Talk, it's in need of a rebranding, so to speak, so that we actually see how we can implement the different tenets and principles of what you're setting out to do. So having said that, can we give a warm Alexandria welcome to Dr. Maya Dilworth.
Yay!
Oh, and I forgot to, you're so many things: author, lecturer, mother, wife, and for you to fit us into your schedule, I'm just so grateful for that.
Oh,
yes.
So thank you.
I'm grateful to you, McKenya. And I hope you are well after your, last call to me. I know that you are in need of healing and balance, and I hope that you are taking care of yourself. I appreciate how much you take care of other people, and how much you do to share stories and to uncover the beauty and the bounty of our communities. And I thank you for inviting me here. May I ask you to introduce the people who are in the room with you?
Absolutely. And, one of the things that I love to do is I love for people to sort of, stand up and be heard themselves. So I am going to turn it over to a member of Christ the King, who I actually pulled her out of Bible study. But I think I would be okay with that. So would you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, my name is Lisa. I go to Christ the King here in Alexandria, and I'm a nurse practitioner.
Wow.
Thank you. Hi, Lisa,
I love
right?
nurses.
Yes.
Oh my God, I love nurses, especially after my experience. Yes.
Okay, I'm Salman. I'm a student at Glasgow Middle School. I'm a 6th grader.
That's good.
And I'm 11 years old.
Very good.
I already enjoyed meeting you. Would you do me a favor and just spell your name for me so that I can...
Yeah, sure. Salma.
Oh, like Salma.
Oh, okay.
Nice. You know what that means, Salma? It means peace. So, a beautiful name.
Wow.
Thank you.
And did you also tell her that you're what is your first language?
Arabic.
Arabic. So she learned English when she came to this country, so she's very, very smart.
Nice.
Just reading.
Okay, Mr. August.
You want to change roles?
Indeed.
My name is August Bullock. I am retired educator after 39 years.
What?
Teacher, principal, central office, all of that. But a passion of mine was always to go into the arts. So upon retirement and with some family transition, I got my feet wet by writing a play, and then it just blew up from there in a positive way. And now I'm trying to still look at arts and education, arts and ways to help people, especially young people, think, read, and appreciate who they are and be able to find other ways for communicating, because I still observe schools, I still, follow that pattern, and I agree with what has been said before. There's a great need for other ways of expressions. If I can take 1 minute. On the way here, there was a conversation about a principal at a local high school in Bethesda, Walt Whitman High School. He wrote a letter to his parents, asking the parents of his school not to have drinking parties with their children. In other words, I'm going to let you drink in the house because I don't want you drinking in the streets. And he received some negative feedback. Well, enough for this to be a conversation. The panel on the radio show, one person said, well, I hate to agree with the parents, but I would have to say, yeah, that would be right. And there were other calls that came in that kind of all lended support to the fact that I would rather have my child drink in the house as opposed to drink in the streets. In my mind, I'm thinking, what's to say that they're not going to drink in the street anyway, since they've gotten your permission? Secondly, are we that out of control that we will embrace that to that point? And what will be the next cycle? As an educator, I'm more or less with the principal. But again, I've got to look at how can we communicate that message to parents that you don't need to. And Bethesda is a high income area. It is not that makes it different, but I'm just saying these are educated parents generally at the school. There's a high level of education at the school. But yet for many of them, it seems to be that's the best way to handle this problem. I guess that's still with me in my thoughts
your spirit,
right now.
Yeah,
so,
your spirit, yeah.
I'm just concerned about what are we saying to our young people. So,
right.
Yeah, okay, that's me.
Well, thank you. And I think that's a nice transition, although I think it's all sort of interconnected to what we want to teach our young people and how we want the message, whatever we're teaching at the home, we want it to be enforced in the schools and throughout society. So how can we do that in terms of peace building? How can we make it a norm to be peaceful and interact with each other peacefully?
Yes, so definitely I thank you for bringing that up, McKenya. I think that there are tools, and some of those tools are available on our website and that sort of thing, but also many of the ideas and tools are going to come from your community and your experience. So we at the Seeds of Peace are not so much like a curriculum, but we're more of a framework and a hub. And as McKenya was saying, we bring together families, school, and community to kind of define together what it is that we want our children to be able to do and to know. And we think of peace building as very broad. So when we talk about nurturing peace makers, we define peace as social justice, we define it as equity, we define it as multiculturalism, we define it as environmental stewardship, wellness and community resilience, negotiation, mediation, and other forms of alternative dispute resolution. We define it as restorative justice in our schools rather than, and looking at prison reform. So peace is defined very broadly, but in all instances, it is about action, how we can engage our communities and build more bridges between school, community, and family. So often these days, the things that counselors or teachers or administrators in schools are doing are done in isolation. There isn't a lot of, and that goes to the problems that you were just articulating, August. Were you named after August Wilson, or?
It's spelled just like his name, and I did have the pleasure of meeting him.
Wow,
but,
I'm envious.
Wow.
It was my uncle. That's where the August came from. So, but I'm claiming August Wilson.
I was born in August, so I like that.
Wow.
But we
Dr. Ian, can I just interject?
Saying about very often we, I think, have a need to open up the channels and lines of communication between families, educators, and community leaders. And so a lot of what we do is we think about how do we bring the kids out into the community, how do we foster leadership in them, how do we advance moral courage, how do we make them upstanders, and we also think about how we can contribute to the schools, especially the public schools, more meaningfully, and push in and ensure that education has the support, the input, the contributions, and the resources of the community at large. And so during the day, we share all of these different tools to support the seeds, which are basically divided within into sort of the categories of within, between, and in service. And our feeling is that in order to really build peace, we need to do it in an integrated way. So rather than have character education, for instance, that is just on after-school programs or on the weekends, it has to be integrated in every subject. So in science, right, how do we think about using science for conservation or for community resilience? How do we use math to look at equity issues and how to move people into a better place economically, or understand the possibilities of microfinance and rural credit programs globally, or looking statistically at the needs of the community, both on a local and global level? How do we use English and language arts classes to build empathy, to understand other voices, to braid voices, to entwine our voices with those of distant others? How do we use social studies to learn history and current events from multiple perspectives, right? And so it's integrated in that way, but it's also integrated school, community, and family. So it's also integrated into the work that we do as coaches, as in community centers, in theaters, in the work that happens around the dinner table with families. So we have in the morning representatives from community, family, and schools come to speak to us and think innovatively about how to foster the seeds. So the seeds within that we consider really important are critical thinking, and one of the things that we do is we break that down. Like, critical thinking is not just about the intellect. It's also about reflection. It's about mining our own interiors. It's about bringing together the intellect and social emotional learning as well. So that's an example. And we think about courage. And courage is not just about taking the leap, but courage is also about how do we endure in the face of violence? How do we persist in the face of seemingly intractable, or insurmountable problems. How do we have the courage to reach out to people who are very different from us, or who have labeled or misunderstood us?
Now, Dr. Ng.
So courage is defined.
Dr. Ng, just a moment for that particular one, especially when you hit on the violence, and in the face of what has happened in Beirut, Kenya, Paris, how do we plead the case of peace building in the face of such grotesque violence?
Well, one thing that I have all of my students. So right now I'm the director of community outreach and global learning for the Matsunaga Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution here in Hawaii, and I teach leadership for social change. I teach peace education. I teach the history of nonviolence and the history of peace movements, and I'm in charge of the practicum, the internships, but at the undergraduate level. But one thing is, I say to them, these are complex problems, and all of us can engage and act immediately. And what happens instead is we feel powerless. But you say, take Paris, right? And people say, all right, so this is something that feels very far away, and what can we do? We don't have the power over government. We don't have the power over ISIS. So, but there are so many things that you can do. This is about making sure that there isn't discrimination for Muslims here. This is about trying to understand enough of what is happening and looking at ISIS so that we dispel fear, so that there is the development of courage. And part of that can happen with art, it can happen with music, with journalism. One thing that you can do is certainly, reach out to try to connect with victims. We can certainly think about what is our impact on education global girls' education. How do we bring together a global movement of moderates? What can we do on that front? How can we, in some way, share our story, our thoughts, on blogs or by self-publishing? How can we think about, the fact that much of what's happening there is about community fragility, and how do we build up and contribute to the strength of the region. What is our role in bringing in Syrian immigrants, for instance? Some states have been reactive and have closed down, the doors to Syrian immigrants.
Not Virginia.
And not Hawaii. Then the idea is, with all immigrant communities, so often we allow folks in, invite them in, and then we leave them, and they're
for themselves.
Maybe what you can do is looking at, transitions, getting resources, immigrant aid. So I work with a place called it's basically a farm out in Punia, and it's a global center here that does immigrant advocacy and allows for transitional assistance, legal aid. How do we get them on the Affordable Care Act? There is a lot to be done, and so maybe even if you don't have power over ISIS, there's some way that you can kind of take the situation and empower yourself to engage in everyday leadership, participatory leadership, so that you don't feel powerless. I remember recently I was talking about my trip to Okinawa, and Okinawa in World War II suffered a great deal at the hands of Japanese soldiers, and American soldiers. They have this peace monument there, and this peace monument is wonderful. It's like Maya Lin's Vietnam Memorial in that it has on these black slate, these walls, the names of those who died are inscribed. But what makes it different from the Vietnam Memorial is that it's not just the names of Okinawans who died at this place. It's the names of the Japanese, it's the names of Americans, Australians, Europeans. And the idea is it's in shared recognition of the loss and the suffering. And it's overlooking the place where so much blood was shed, and where Japanese soldiers jumped off the cliff rather than be captured. And so in this place of bloodshed and of sorrow and of suffering, they say, because they know what's at stake, that they are experts on peace. And these black slates are like waves, and they moving past the jumping off place and into the water. And from there, they say, peace will roll like waves across the ocean.
That's amazing.
And, connecting
I would like to go there.
Places. And I was really struck by the sense of responsibility that they had, but also the sense of optimism and assurance in their own power, in their own capacity to impact other places in the world. And I was talking to these high school kids in Okinawa, and there was a lot of tension around the U.S. military bases because there were so many bases and so many Japanese bases. I think 70% are on Okinawa.
I'm sorry, I took her.
Oh.
And so...
What are you doing?
I'm sorry, we have someone else from Christ the King. We're actually having
I'm sorry.
No, you're welcome. This is Dr.Maya Ing, and she teaches peace studies at the University of Hawaii. And I sort of kidnapped Lisa.
That's all right, I'll leave you to it.
Yeah.
Check on her.
No, we want you to come too and have a seat.
I've gotta finish in here.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Sorry about that. Yeah.
No worries. But yes, so these high school students were thinking about how the American soldiers, there was a lot of anger and there wasn't a lot of connection. And there were actually stores that said, no American soldiers, are welcome here, and that sort of thing. And there was a lot of tension. And Okinawans were very frustrated, many of them. So these high school kids said, I've never gone on base and I've never seen soldiers, come to our community. So these high school kids started these baseball games to bring out the American soldiers and invited American soldiers from the base. And, interesting that on my way out, I met some American soldiers and they confirmed that they never spent any time outside of the base. And so it was two separate societies completely, not segregated by law, but just it's de facto segregation that we see in so many places. And I thought that's so great that these high school kids felt empowered, to change that and to reach out and to connect. And I think that that's something that in the face of, events like you mentioned, of violence all around the world and in our own country.
Oh, sorry. Are you okay? Okay, sorry, yeah. That's a quite fashionable cooler there, right? You all right?
But I think that expanding our own feelings of power, over power to impact change, power to minimize fear, power to engage new voices and stakeholders. We have power to do things.
Right.
And we focus so much on the power, what we don't have the power to do, when it comes to stuff like that. And so that's a lot of what the Seeds of Peace does. We also look at the seeds between, how do we foster compassion? How do we foster better communication? How do we, do conflict resolution and change the language? How do we, those kinds of things we all can do in every space. And the seeds in service are, commitment and community, commitment to one another, to ourselves, to the process of peace, and to, and to community variously defined. And so, and we do action plans. And so these are things that all of us can do. And we do a lot of backwards mapping here in Hawaii. We use the metaphor of canoe travel. I don't know what you would do in DC given the fact that traffic is so bad tonight where you are in Virginia. It may be that you don't want to think about the highways and byways, but maybe want to think about flight.
Yes, yes.
We do canoe travel, but because we're islands, and so we think, well, what is the island where we want to be? What does that look like? What is there? Now, what are we going to put in our canoes? What are our human and other resources? Who do we want to journey there with?